Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you, this time talking episode 9 of season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, Into the Forest I Go. And this is quite a good little episode here, a nice wrap-up of what's going on this season. So let's kind of get right into things. I really do think that what was going on with Ash was really the center of this episode. In my mind. I mean, even though Burnham's the main character, I kind of felt like the most compelling character thing this episode really was what happens with Ash. And just him seeing L'Rell and having this horrific flashback, going into shock, us getting to see in disturbing detail a lot more of what was going on when she was abusing him. It's pretty disturbing and really intense. And the situation at the end where she basically says to him, you know, it's okay, I'll protect you. It really heavily implies that a lot more happened to him than just him being molested by her. That she still has control over him to some degree, which is enormously worrying considering the situation where we leave off. And it also kind of puts her in a nice and interesting opposition to Burnham. You know, Burnham is somebody who genuinely cares about Ash and wants what's best for him, but L'Rell, who just basically only cares about herself, despite whatever she might think or even believe herself, and does not have Ash's best interests at heart. And yet she's the one who has this mysterious control over him in some way, shape, or form, which is yet to be determined. So that's quite interesting. Cornwell turning out to be alive. Okay, I had a sense that was where this was going, just like from the way the camera lingered on her the last time we saw her. And again, her being on the Discovery is, well, that's also a real big seed for, you know, what could possibly happen next, because she knows the deal with Lorca, and you have to wonder if she doesn't believe that he did, in fact, set her up to be captured and tortured by the Klingons. And, you know, never mind that she also has a connection to L'Rell, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also a little bit surprising that Cornwell isn't yelling her head off about, you know, how Lorca is a dangerous lunatic, but one assumes that her situation in sickbay has probably precluding that at the moment. Also, speaking of which, since when do Starfleet captains have the authority to override the orders of a medical officer in regards to someone else's health? In fact, I'm pretty sure Deep Space Nine, like, seriously spelled out the fact that you know, the captains cannot order something to be done by someone if the doctor says, like, no, this will damage their health. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's been pointed out in other Trek series, that if it is against the doctor, that the doctor can trump the captain's orders in regards to medical conditions. So that's kind of BS right there. I mean, yes, you can always say, well, this happens before the original series, so maybe Starfleet regs changed, but that just really doesn't jive. It really doesn't make sense that, you know, something like that would be true. Having the doctor have that authority, and having always had that authority, that's what makes sense. This feels like a bit of shoddy writing on the series part on that front. Speaking of, but anyway, the whole situation with Stamets and his boyfriend, that was all nicely done. I mean, Stamets does have legitimate reasons to be worried that a medical examination would find problems with him, which it does. And of course, this being a drama, this all ends up in tears. But I did really like that scene between Stamets and Lorca, where Lorca is speaking very reverently about the idea of being able to go back to being an explorer, which really kind of makes me question exactly what's going on in Lorca's head. You know, when he freaked out earlier with Cornwall, it really did seem to me like having this mission, this war to fight against the Klingons, and having Discovery, this was the only thing that really gave his life meaning. But if he really still does believe in that, that there is so much great value in exploration, then that says a lot about him and is potentially something that could be a redeeming feature for him. On the other hand, if he's just blowing smoke up Stamets' butt, then wow, what a manipulative bastard. So either way, it's an extremely interesting character moment. It's just a question of how sincere do you think Lorca was being in that moment? And the ambiguity of it all, I mean, it speaks really well to Jason Isaacs as an actor. Not that he's a great actor really needs to be reiterated. I mean, the guy's done so much amazing work. But nonetheless, it was a really nice performance. And whatever I might think logically, just the emotions of that scene, it really makes me think that Lorca was indeed being sincere. So I have to kind of question whether or not he's grown as a character or if I kind of misread him earlier in the series. You know, it would be interesting if I was wrong about him, that it wasn't really so much the war that he thought gave his life meaning. It was really just discovery itself, being the captain of that ship. And that it doesn't really matter if he's fighting a war, if he's exploring space. So long as he has that, then his life has meaning, which is in some ways not that dissimilar to other captains. I mean, who was it? Janeway Picard, who said, you know, don't ever let them take you out of that captain's chair. Don't let them put an admiral's uniform on you. As long as you're sitting in that captain's chair, that's where you can really make the difference. And yeah, they're probably right. Let's see what else. I really love how there was just this very quick, very subtle agreement between the crew that, like, we're going to do everything we can to technically not disobey Starfleet orders, but yeah, F Starfleet orders. That was very nicely done. A very kind of Kirk sort of moment there, but one that was well done and appreciated. And just Burnham's whole situation with going on the ship and ultimately taking on Cole again. All of that was really nicely done. It served as a nice conclusion to her journey this season, and her taking on Cole, and ultimately to kind of get her captain's badge back, her former captain's badge back. Again, all really nicely done, and very in keeping with Star Trek from the past. I mean, I love the whole thing where it's basically like, yeah, if you challenge a Klingon to a duel of honor, they just more or less they kind of have to go for it. I mean, it's kind of a hallmark of Klingon culture, but also a dependable and exploitable weakness, provided you're actually pretty good at hand-to-hand combat, which, you know, giving her training in martial arts, you know, Burnham does manage to hold her own. Of course, she ultimately ends up metaphorically running away in the middle of the fight, but Cole doesn't have a lot of time to stand around and complain about it because he gets blown to hell very shortly thereafter. And frankly, given all the nonsense stuff that Cole has done, I mean, she even flat out points out, like, how do you call yourself honorable after all the BS that you've done? And Cole just more takes the other, like, well, what's that line from Rome? If treason prospers, none dare call it treason. If backstabbing and bastardry prospers, none dare call it backstabbing and bastardry, right? And we've seen many, many times before that the Klingons are certainly not above dirty politics and dirty tricks and basically being dishonorable so long as it serves their interests. Because, you know, hey, once you're powerful enough, you can retroactively justify anything as honorable in some way, shape, or form. Much like real-world politics from pretty much any culture you care to name across any point in history. Sorry, that sort of thing has just been on my mind a lot lately because I recently finished listening to the excellent The History of Rome podcast. 179 episodes, chronologically laying out the history of the Roman Empire. Very, very entertaining stuff. But boy, man, there were some real bastards in Roman history. But it's nonetheless quite interesting. So yeah, and then we kind of ultimately end up with this with the Discovery after that really great stuff with the special effects and the jumping. I mean, really well done. Somewhere, and God only knows where, with all these Klingon ships laying around, you have to wonder, like, well, what is this? Where is this? What's going on? And the fact that they talked about alternate realities so much this episode really kind of makes me wonder if that hasn't happened, if they haven't been knocked into some alternate reality. Part of me kind of hopes that somehow, some way, we're going to get to see the mirror universe in season two, but don't know, don't know. Nonetheless, despite some flaws, Star Trek Discovery was really, really good. It feels like what Star Trek in 2017 should be. It's very in keeping with the Star Trek of the past, but has reinvented itself visually and thematically to fit in with what's going on with people today, with the way our society, is. But the things that really make Star Trek are still all there. It's still all really enjoyable. I really do feel like my love for Star Trek has been reinvigorated by this series. Voyager had its moments, but ultimately I walked away from that series disappointed. And yes, there were some fun moments with the J.J. Abrams movies, but again, that just felt like generic sci-fi action movies with a Star Trek coat of paint thrown on. Never mind all the stuff in there that went horrifically against Star Trek canon, like Kirk not having a brother and various other things. But nonetheless, this was a really good series and a very enjoyable series, and I am immensely looking forward to season 2. This really does feel like the best moments of Deep Space Nine, which, while Next Gen will always be the #1 show in my heart, even I admit that at the end of the day, Deep Space Nine was the best written of the Star Trek series. And boy, when they were really on their game, Deep Space Nine was fantastic. And this reminds me of the feelings I had when I watched those really good Deep Space Nine stories. And I haven't felt that way in a long, long time about anything Star Trek, and it's so good to have that feeling back. I mean, we've got so many great actors, so much great going on in terms of special effects, in terms of makeup, in terms of ideas, nods to classic Trek. I mean, it's, again, not without its flaws, but really, this really feels like what I've been waiting for, and I'm just really happy about it. So guys, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Please also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.